What even is smallpox? The structure of smallpox is this, with the outer membrane, a capsid, DNA there. It's a DNA virus from the Poxviridae family. It's an extremely large virus, as shown by its extreme complexity here. It's a very hard virus, rarely mutates, and has two main strains, variola major, which is more severe, and variola minor. What's so unique about this virus? The only virus to have ever been eradicated. There's no such thing as an asymptomatic carrier. All who are infectious have symptoms. There's no treatments once you're infected. If you aren't vaccinated, you're dead. And it can only affect humans, no animals that affects. Also, the using of smallpox blankets during Native American colonialism was the first example of biological warfare ever.
Okay, smallpox, not good. Pretty bad. These are my portions. That's what this prez is for. Give me a good grade. This is history. We're speedrunning this. Yeah. Ramesses V, excavated 1825, died a while back, smallpox. 1898, French Indochina, that's a place. 95% of children had smallpox, and somewhere over here, 90% of that blindness was caused by the disease. Based. Here, this is long. It goes like 6th century to 18th, I think. Yeah, it goes 17th century. Europeans went, or here, yeah, I think 17th century. European settlers brought to America. That caused genocide more than we already committed. Boom. Australia, on average, 3 out of every 10 people who contracted C died. That sucks. And the first ways, somewhere over here, controlling smallpox is called something. People who hadn't been exposed to were exposed to smallpox sore by scratching the material into their arm, like I do with needles, or inhaling it through their nose, like I do with Coke. I mean, experienced the symptoms that had a lower fatality rate than people that naturally had it naturally. That's somewhere on here, I think. Even more smallpox. I don't know where my mouse is. Let's go. Vaccination started sometime in 1800s, 1796. Edward Jenner, I think. Pretty sure. I can't see my screen. An English doctor shows the effectiveness of previous cowpox infection in protecting people from smallpox. On God, bro. Top G. That was vaccination. Last death was 1977, 1978. It was Janet Parker. Imagine. On 9/11. Man, that really is a bad day. Mechanisms of transmission. That's a good one. I put stuff for that one. Yeah, so human-human transmission of smallpox occurs by large virus-containing airborne droplets of saliva from a person's infected with smallpox. Infected virus particles are released from the sloughing from that word. That's a long word. The patients are considered infectious from the time the first one appears throughout the course of the disease until the last scab falls off the body, which takes a while. I don't have it, but it takes a while. This disease had before it was eradicated, the disease had a secondary household or close contact attack rate of approximately 60% among unvaccinated individuals. Yeah, there's more. Can you believe it? Yeah, so transmission via contact with material from the smallpox pustules or crusted scabs can also occur. Scabs are less infectious than respiratory secretions because, let's be honest, when you're touching someone else's scab, yeah. Though rare, there are also reports of airborne transmission in hospital and laboratory settings, which once again are they're low and rare. Also, the disease no longer exists, so good. As long as you're adhering to infection control procedures, can reduce this risk. There are no known animal infected reservoirs of smallpox, which is good because my dog doesn't have it.
For the incubation period of smallpox, it usually had a period of 10 to 14 days on average, ranging from 7 to 19 days. During this period, the infected person has no symptoms and they are not contagious. Time affected was as such: the initial symptoms for 2 to 4 days, early rash about 4 days, pustular rash and scabs about 10 days. Scabs all fall off at about 6 days, and all in all, would all be done at about 3 weeks on average. 4 weeks after the first rash, all scabs had fallen off and they were no longer infectious.
So first we have stage 1, which is the virus is there, but there's no symptoms, and it's just replicating itself and spreading itself through your body. Then we have like stage 2, the initial symptoms is aches throughout your body, high fever, vomiting, and it isn't very contagious. Stage 3 is the early rash. It's the most contagious. Breaks out in your tongue and mouth first, and then will break out into your face, and spores will start spreading in less than a day to your entire body. And then a rash that will last around 5 days, and the rash is large bumps, very sensitive to the touch, and this stage is very deadly. And then we have stage 5, the scabs falling off. This stage will last about a week, and it's still contagious, just not as much, and it'll leave permanent scars on your body, and it's very bad. And then we have no more scabs. Once all the scabs have fallen off, the person will no longer be contagious. I'm just gonna write down more stuff.
So the cause of the disease is the variola virus, and that causes smallpox. Smallpox was mostly spread like long, direct face-to-face contact with other people, most like talking and having conversations. When the infected sneezed or coughed, like we all usually do, they would send small respiratory particles through the air. When others inhaled these droplets, they'd become infected. We all know this. We were in COVID. Sometimes they would be infected by like a rash or crusted material from a swab, and it can also be spread through things like sheets, towels, and clothing. So yeah, it's like lice, but bad. It's most contagious when the sores appear in the throat and mouth. And yeah.
Mortality rate for smallpox untreated for variola minor was about 1%, but for the variola major strain, it was about 30%. 65 to 80% of survivors were left with deeply pitted scars, but that was just the mortality rate in Europe. In the Americas, it was much higher because of no natural immunity. Once treated, it was 0% because the vaccination was extremely effective against smallpox. How did it kill? Well, smallpox would kill through a variety of ways. The most common one was organ failure, usually through the lungs, but sometimes it would be from systemic shock where it would overtake the entire body, or toxins in the blood caused by the infection of smallpox, or sometimes it could just be so painful that the shock would actually kill you.
We aren't really positive where smallpox originated from, but there are traces of a rash-like disease found 3,000 years ago in mummies, and there is written forms of smallpox found in 4th century China, and this is how it spread. 6th century, China and Korea traded with Japan, bringing it to there, and then Arabian expansion spread smallpox to northern Africa, Spain, and Portugal, and then the 11th century crusades spread through Europe. Portugal, 15th century, Portugal occupies part of Western Africa, brings smallpox. And then European settlers and African slave trade import smallpox into the Caribbean and like Central America. And then European settlers bring smallpox to North America. And in the 18th century, explorers from Great Britain bring it to Australia. And now, current day, I'm not sure where that is, but there's no current part of the world affected by it today because the last case was in 1977 and it was considered eradicated in 1980. We have treatments and cures. Throughout history, there have been 3 main ways to prevent smallpox. First, we have variolation, which was taking scabs from an infected person and putting it into somebody's nose. This was found in 10th century Asia and spread to Africa, India, and the Ottoman Empire. It was much better than getting smallpox because rather than having a 30% chance of death, there's only a 4% chance. Next is inoculation, which is basically the same, but rather of putting it in the nostril, it's like injected into your skin. And just like the other one, it's just like a vaccine, and the chances of death are much lower. Cowpox, this was like how vaccines were kind of founded. It's similar to smallpox, but it's less deadly, and it was found in cows and was able to jump to humans. And the infection was just it was more mild and just less worse. There's a photo of that. And then vaccinations are made of smaller versions or weaker versions of the virus to help your body develop antibodies for when the actual virus gets infected. The smallpox vaccine was something called Vaccina, and if you get it within 7 days of being infected, it may help your symptoms some, but you'll still get sick. And eradication. Today, it isn't necessary to get this because the virus is considered eradicated in 1980. But back then, children in schools were lined up and they would get like injected with an air pressured vaccine gun, and everybody has like that was injected has like a scar on their arm now, including Mr. B.
So for important people in smallpox, these are the main people. So for starters, there's Lady Mary Wortley Montagu. She was a British woman who found out variolation in the Ottoman Empire through bathhouses and brought it back to England. Then there was Edward Jenner. He was a British physician who had an apprenticeship, and during this, he heard a dairymaid say that she couldn't get smallpox because she had already had cowpox. And he tested on the boy James Phipps and found out that cowpox would provide immunity to smallpox while being less dangerous. Another one was Viktor Zhdanov. He was a Soviet scientist born in Ukraine who petitioned the World Health Organization to start the eradication of smallpox. Another one, or these two, are Cotton Mather and Zabdiel Boylston. They are responsible for bringing treatment of smallpox into America. Cotton Mather got a slave who taught him about variolation, and then he consulted Zabdiel Boylston, and they decided that they should use inoculation, so he started an inoculation program. And this was maybe the first time they used statistics to evaluate a medical procedure because they calculated the fatality rates of infections in Boston.